let's go. We're still rolling, right?
Yeah,
amazing.
Course. Amazing. Yeah. That's where we're going.
Yeah, let's just have a talk.
I'm just trying to have a talk, but you keep saying let's have a talk. You're like, I'm trying to get in there. Okay, so NAR released a new law that went into effect. When did it go into effect? I thought it was July 1st, and there's just a lot of things happening.
So let's take a step back, and let's start with the first phrase there. There is no law. There is no law. Okay. So first of all, let's take a little step back and let's talk about the business. Okay. So real estate agents, and this is unique in the United States. A lot of people don't understand that this is not the norm across the globe, across the world. So in the United States, it is a custom that there is a National Association of Realtors, which is different from a real estate agent. A real estate agent is somebody that went to a course, took a state exam, passed the state exam, and now they have a license.
Okay.
That license becomes active when they accompany it together, when they attach it to a brokerage. Okay.
So you don't have to be a realtor.
You do not have to be a realtor in order to be a real estate agent. Okay. Those are two separate things. Now, the real estate agent has to have a current and active license. Current means your continuing education, your license and your dues are paid to the state, and it is attached with a brokerage, because the public does business with a brokerage, which is managed by a broker. You like the pauses?
Yeah, very dramatic.
Very dramatic. But I want everyone, because a realtor could be seeing this, a borrower could be seeing this, a buyer, a seller. So I want everyone to really understand this, because this is important. So a real estate agent is somebody that got the license. A realtor is somebody that got a license, joined the National Association of Realtors, NAR, and took an oath to their ethics, okay, and their code of conduct. That is what makes somebody a realtor. Now, with that, there is something called the MLS, the multi-listing service, all right? Now, you cannot join the MLS, most MLSs, you cannot join them without having an affiliation account or being a realtor. So being a realtor gets you access to the MLS. There are some services that you can get, such as home inspectors and appraisers, where they don't have to be realtors, that could also gain access to the MLS. So the MLS is where this big complaint is coming from, and the exclusive listing agreement is where the debate for NAR is coming from.
Who sued NAR and why?
Okay, so the initial lawsuit, which took years, okay, was between Seitzer, Burnett, and the National Association of Realtors. And I'm going to bring it to you in actual terms and what actually happens. So these agreements that I have here, and I am not a real estate attorney, I am not an attorney at all, okay? This is my own opinion. But these are the agreements, okay, that are drawn usually by the state association, because when you join the National Association of Realtors, you are joining three associations. Your local association, which shout out to the Orlando Regional Realtor Association, to the Florida Association of Realtors, which, by the way, it is right across the street from us. Okay, beautiful building right across the street from us, here near the airport. And a lot of people don't know that, by the way, that the Florida Association of Realtors is here in Orlando. And then lastly, the National Association of Realtors, which is in Washington, D.C. So when you join all three of those associations. The state association is the one that is normally in charge of drafting legal documents and contracts on behalf of realtors that are fill in the blank. Okay, and everyone uses this a generic template to plug in and play. So So the thing that's important is when a listing agent gets into a seller's home, the issue is that the listing agent will negotiate a commission. It has always been negotiable. It has never been non-negotiable. Real estate commissions are negotiable. There is no standard
6%.
There
3%.
is no 6% and that's what it is. There is none of that. Every single time the commissions are negotiable. The part that is a bit conflicting, a bit confusing, is that when you're in a listing appointment, the listing agent who works for ABC Realty is saying, hey, my real estate commissions or the real estate commissions are X%, 5%, 6%, whatever, negotiated between the seller and the listing agent. But right underneath that, it has a cooperating commission, meaning how much will the commission that is charged to the seller be cooperated with, split with someone that brings a buyer to them, okay? That's the part where it gets a little bit confusing because the seller has agreed to do business with ABC Realty. The seller has never agreed to do business with XYZ Realty. Now, the listing agreement says that there's a cooperating, that, hey, I might cooperate with another agent, another brokerage to get this property sold. By doing so, I'm going to split the commission. But there's a couple of issues with that, right? So, for example, this is just a hypothetical. Let's just say that I am a seller and I'm going through a divorce. Let's just say that's what's happening. And guess what? My ex-wife owns a real estate brokerage, and the divorce is not that cordial. We're having real problems. And I really don't want anything to do with my ex-wife during the sale of this transaction, right? So I put my house on the market. My ex-wife real estate brokerage or another brokerage, because as a broker, you could have what is called a multiple brokers license.
Right.
I get an offer, and the offer is from an agent from her brokerage, from her office. And I get the offer. I don't really realize maybe who the buying agent is, or the brokerage, or how they correlate with each other. I just agree. Well, long story short, I end up finding out that my house was not only negotiated by this buying agent, but by the broker who is my ex-wife. I never agreed to do that. I never agreed to that, right? And that's where the issue comes, where there's this little gray, weird line where, hey, I agreed to pay this company this amount of money. I never agreed to some other company specifically. Maybe in the listing agreement it says there was a part you were going to cooperate with, but I never agreed to be that company. And I have the right to decide who I want to do business with, especially if it's coming out of my pocket, right? That's where this debate really comes from. It is a debate of language, because it is not a debate of practice.
Oh, because if, at the end of the day, why does the seller care as long as the house is sold?
Well, some sellers care for a lot of different reasons, right? In that example, I gave the example of my ex-wife owning the brokerage, but it could be a friend.
I think the seller had an issue with the transaction and the buyer's agent maybe not cooperating, or
whatever the reason may be. The core of this is transparency. That's where the core of this debate is at. Is that I signed an agreement to pay X person, and I never signed an agreement to pay B person. That is where the debate in this at. It's a debate. It is a lawsuit that was based on transparency and the lack thereof transparency. I'm of the opinion that it's not going to change in the practice of what we do. The seller will ultimately end up paying the commissions on both sides, ultimately, because it is what makes most sense, because the seller is the one that is obtaining the total income and revenue from the sale of their transaction, not the buyer. Most buyers don't have the down payment and closing costs to come to the table. and struggle with that. DPA has been in a huge increase right now. So to assume that buying agents are automatically now going to have this huge amount of assets, it's not going to happen. And in this situation, we're in a pendulum. And this month is a very important month, and so in August, where it's going to come out. The sellers are those that are paying attention to this. They're going to be some sellers are going to say, no, I'm not paying a nickel or a dime. Big fat zero. I'm not paying nothing.
I'm giving you 3% listing agent.
I'm paying the listing agent, not my problem.
You find the buyer.
You find the buyer. So what's going to happen is buyers don't have access to the MLS. And as much as you want it to be, Zillow, Trulia, realtor.com, that data is not live. It is not to the point, to the moment. It takes longer to that data doesn't flow as easily. And there is so much involved through this whole entire process. You know, a lot of people don't understand what realtors really do, especially the buying agent. The buying agent has been under attack throughout this whole situation. And most people are ignorant to what exactly a buying agent does. They think it's just a key, they open the door and they're done. Most people don't know that a buying agent that represents a buyer will sometimes be showing homes for 3 months, 6 months, or a year long without any source of income.
Yeah.
Putting on average 30,000 miles on their car on maintenance. Okay, think about a car that you just bought, $25, $30, $45, $50,000. That in the first year that you buy that car, you put 30,000 miles on that car. That car is worthless, okay? A negative depreciation, not including the expense of gas prices, insurance, and so on. So it's a huge impact that the buyer's agent is just so valuable. So what's going to happen is the sellers, a few of them, I believe, because very good listing agents are going to be able to really explain this well. But there's going to be a few sellers that have been following this. They're going to say, I'm not going to pay. And that's fine. What they're going to find is that movement into their homes is going to decrease significantly. And because buying agents and realtors are what move the real estate market, because they are professionals, okay? NAR has about 12% of homes nationwide are sold through for sale by owner, okay? 12%. That's 88% of homes are sold by cooperations between listing and buying agents. And listing agents know the value of their buying agents. So what's going to happen is that they're going to have to, through however that happens, through a seller concession where the buying agent gets into an agreement with the buyer directly and the seller pays for that through a seller concession, which FHA, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac have all come out saying that any concession from a seller to pay for commissions for a buying brokerage commission is not part of that seller concession threshold, which is huge news. So a conventional, you're able to get 3%, 6%, or up to 9% seller concession depending on your LTV. On FHA, you're able to get up to 6% seller concession. Well, if part of that is used towards the buying commission, then that's going to eat that up. They come out and said, no, any part of the commissions, any part of the seller concession towards the commissions is not
included
I know this is a very sexy conversation. You can barely contain yourselves.
Yeah,
I know.
Great. This is exciting stuff.
But
it is very important.
It is extremely important. You know, I don't work for the Florida Association of Realtors or NAR. This is speculation of what I believe will happen over time. So here's a copy of the MLS, okay, right here, right? And you may see it here in the video, specifically the area that I'm going to be explaining, which is part of the realtor information at the bottom of the MLS. Ultimately, the biggest change is that when a buying agent is searching for homes for a buyer, on the MLS, it says the offer of compensation.
Yeah.
And the rule has been, not the law, the rule has been by the National Association of Realtors that a listing could not be placed on the MLS without an offer of compensation. That is the rule that is changing. And not only can a listing go on the MLS without an offer of compensation.
Mhm.
But no compensation can actually be on the MLS. So when someone is searching for a home,
It won't even be there.
it won't even be there. Now, this is speculation. What I believe eventually is going to happen is listing agents are going to negotiate with sellers up front, pre-negotiated seller concession. That is what I believe is going to happen in the future. Because it is going to be extremely inefficient, extremely annoying, because people do not work on air. They work on compensation. No matter how much the world wished that wasn't true, it is true. So what's going to happen physically, literally, is buying agents immediately are going to have to pick up the phone, call a listing, and say, how much is the offer of compensation? Now imagine a listing agent putting a property on the market and a brokerage getting hundreds of calls just to get an offer of compensation. So naturally, there's going to be an efficient way to do that. And the efficient way to do that is going to be, because there's no rule against how much seller concession a seller is willing to pay. There is no rule against that. So what's going to happen is the listing agent will say, hey, this is the way that it goes. Buyers don't have the money to pay for their buyer's agent. They're going to come at you. They're going to come to you and they're going to say, here's an offer. And they're going to come to you and say, this is the seller concession that I want to, that I'm looking for to help the buyer pay for their commissions. So the buying agent will get into an agreement with the buyer directly for their commissions. So the buyer is responsible for it. But then they're going to send an offer to the seller that says, I want to offer you $400,000 for your house. And with that, the buyer is requesting that the seller pay 3% in seller concession, for example. And that's where the seller will either negotiate that they wish not to, or they don't, or so on and so on. And what will eventually happen as a form of efficiency, not an offer of compensation, that the MLS will add a phrase to some degree that says pre-negotiated seller concession, period. Not for anything specific,
right.
Just pre-negotiated seller concession. And that will be an amount that will go in there.
We see on even Zillow where homes are on the very beginning of the sentence, it says seller is going to pay X amount, 10,000 towards seller concession and whatnot. What can stop people from just putting on their realtor commission, buyer's commission on Zillow, or they're not allowed to at all put it in anywhere in the comments?
Well, look, realtors have control. Okay, the largest association in the United States. I want you to hear me when I said that. The number one largest association in the United States is the National Association of Realtors, with well over 1 million members. I think it's like 1.2 million members. They have the control, they have the power. Realtors are not interested in giving their control and power of their industry to a competitor. Zillow, make no mistake, Zillow, Trulia, Homes.com is your competitor. They are the competitor to the realtor.
With Zillow being able to be put on the comment section, and they're able to put buyers can make X, or the seller concession will be X.
Yeah.
There's no rule to that, or is that part?
There's no rule in what the seller is offering to entice someone to buy their home. There is no rule against that. There's a mortgage rule in regards to seller inducement, but that's something totally different. A seller can advertise that they're giving you appliances. A seller can advertise that they're willing to pay the seller concessions.
So we should see seller concessions on a high. Basically, from a lending standpoint, we should start seeing seller concessions be 9%.
The norm.
No. And 3% of that 9 goes to pay
Correct.
The buyer's
Exactly.
commission.
100%.
So
Exactly.
As a lending side, we should then anticipate and say, when we get seller concession, how much of that is going to be. I imagine that's going to be on
buyer brokerage, the buyer
broker.
brokerage agreement, and the addendum that's to the real estate contract, the FAR bar contract, that states how much seller concession they're getting. It can be on the second to last page of the FAR bar contract and the additional terms. It can be a separate addendum that says how much seller concession there is.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. So if you are worried about not buying a house, whether you're worried about listing agents and buyers and sellers and what's going to happen, a lot of people are on hold and they're worried about it.
So
sounds like they shouldn't be worried.
You should not be worried. To the real estate agents in the market that are scared, have anxiety over the situation, the first real estate brokerage license in the state of Florida was given in 1926 here in Orlando. That's why the Florida Association of Realtors, and that is why the Florida Real Estate Commission is here in Orlando, not in Tallahassee. For almost 100 years, for almost 100 years, we have been operating the real estate industry, and we're not going anywhere. The real estate industry is not going anywhere. So we are going to continue to provide value to the community, provide value to our buyers, provide values to the sellers. We have the most sophisticated real estate market in the world, in the entire planet. No real estate market is better than that of the United States and here in the state of Florida. We're going to continue to provide value to the community. The listing agent provides such a huge service. The buying agent provides such a huge service that they're not going anywhere. This is all legality terms. The practice is going to remain the same. In my opinion, this is speculation. This is not legal advice. In my opinion, the practice will remain the same. We're going to go through some transition, but eventually the pendulum will start to move back and it will get organized. At the end, the finish line, when we get there, I don't know, but the finish line, I believe, is going to be the buying agent negotiating with the buyer directly on their commissions, but ultimately the seller will pay, if not 99%, a very high majority of those commissions will be paid by the seller through pre-negotiated seller concessions.